Okay, guys, welcome to Math and Science Masters online classes, right? Okay, today I want you to understand this question, right? I'm going to do this video so that you understand this once and for all, right? So we are going to do this kind of question where they say for which values of x will something will happen, right? So before we understand everything, we need to understand our key points, right? When they're asking for which values of x, f of x is greater than 0, g of x less than 0, and then f of x multiplied by g of x greater than 0, and like that, right? We need to understand our key points. What are our key points? Our key points are going to be the x-intercept. Another key point is going to be the intersection of the two graphs, right? And then what is more important on the intersection of two graphs is going to be the the x coordinate, right? Because we only need to talk the values of x. Sorry, we only need to talk about values of x, right? So before we do anything, we will need coordinates of a, we'll need coordinates of b, and we'll need coordinates of e, right? Okay, so first of all, let's find our coordinates of a. A is on the straight line, is the x-intercept, right? So we're going to find g of x is equals to negative x plus 2. So let me make it to stop predicting for me, okay? So after that, my y, I know that on the x-axis, y is 0, so it's going to be negative x plus 2. So my x will be 2. So the coordinates of a will be 2 and 0, right? So I know that here I've got 2 and 0, right? And then what else? I also need b. B is the x-intercept of the parabola also, right? So it's going to be f of x is equals to x squared minus 4, right? So to solve for x, it's going to be what? It's going to be, okay, it's going to be 0 because the x-intercept, x squared minus 4. So we'll put the 4 to the other side, so it's going to be 4 is equals to x squared. Then we introduce the square root, obviously it's going to be plus or minus, right? And then what's going to be our x? Our x is going to be negative 2 plus or minus negative plus or minus 2, right? So which means that the plus 2 is on a, so that side is going to be minus 2, right? So the coordinates of p is going to be negative 2 is to 0, right? So we've got negative 2 is to 0 there, right? And then the last one is going to be e. E is the point of intersection, right? We all know that to find the point of intersection, we equate the two graphs, right? It's going to be f of x is equals to g of x, right? So what is our f of x? Our f of x is x squared minus 4 equals to negative x plus 2. So we take everything to the left. It's going to be what? It's going to be x squared plus x minus 4 minus 2 equals 0. So it's x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. So when we factorize, it's going to be x minus what? X minus 2 and then x plus 3 equals to 0. So the other coordinate is x equals to 2, which is this one, the other x intercept. So the other one will be x equals to negative 3, right? So which means that here we already know that our x is negative 3. So to find y, although it's not going to be important, the y is not going to be important on our equation. So to find y, we're going to use that one there, right? And then on that one, what are we going to have? We're going to substitute our x with what? We're going to substitute our x with negative 3. So it's going to be g of negative 3. It's going to be negative into negative 3 plus 2. So g of 3 will be 5, right? So it means that the coordinates here is negative 3 is to 5. I know we are all still clear here, right? So the most important thing is was for these questions, right? And then this one here, it was not what I was here for, right? It is not what I was here for. What I'm here for is to understand these kind of questions, right? Okay, so when they ask me for which values of x will f of x be greater than 0, what is f of x? F of x, remember, is y, right? On the graph of what? On the graph of f. And then our graph of f in this case is going to be a parabola, right? So parabola is greater than 0. Remember, greater than 0 means positive. If I ask you what is something, give me anything that is greater than 0, you'll give me a positive thing. You won't give me a negative thing, right? Negative is less than 0. Positive is greater than 0. That is what you need to understand, right? Positive is greater than 0. Negative is less than 0. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you where the graph is positive using the green pen, right? The green will be positive, right? The green for the positive. So the graph is positive here, right, above the x-axis. Obviously, below the x-axis, y is negative, right? And then the graph is also opposite this side there. All right. So you can see that up to infinity there, the graph will be positive, and up to infinity there, the graph will also be positive. The graph will only be negative in this part here. That is the only part where the graph is negative, right? So how do I say that? Okay, the graph of f of x is less than 0 from where? The graph of f of x is less than 0 from this part to this part, from this part here to this part there, right? It's where it's below the x-axis. So graphically, if I need to answer this question, the answer here is going to be straightforward. It's going to be between negative 2 and 2, right? So come here and say x is between negative 2 and 2, right? X is between negative 2 and 2, like this, right? And then we put in the inequality there. The inequality should always be facing on the lower number, right? So x is between negative 2 and 2. So we collect our 2 marks there, right? We collect our 2 marks there. I know this one is still easy. So let's go to the next one. The next one, they want us to understand where g of x is negative. And then with g of x, again, I'm going to show you where g of x is negative, right? G of x above the x-axis is going to be above from here going this direction up to negative infinity, right? And then g of x is going to be negative from this point going this direction up to positive infinity, right? So g of x is less than 0 from what? From 2 going to the right. It means that is g of x is less than 0 from 2 going to the right. It means that x is greater than 2, right? Which means that the answer is x is greater than 2. So the answer there is just going to be x is greater than 2, right? And then we collect our mark there, right? We collect our mark there. So this kind of question now, this one now, we are going to consider both graphs, both f of x and g of x, okay? Since they say f of x multiplied by g of x is greater than 0. What is greater than 0? Greater than 0 is positive, right? Greater than 0 is positive. So how do we get a positive? I get a positive only when I'm multiplying positive multiplied by positive or negative multiplied by negative, right? That is when I get greater than 0, right? So it's either both graphs will be positive or both graphs will be negative. So let's look at the places where they are both positive or they are both negative, right? So I start from this point here. That is the first point that I'm going to be interested on. It's going to be this one, and then the other one is this one. Remember, the interesting point now is going to be the x-intercept. You can see that from all the questions, the most important points are the x-intercepts, right? Okay, so when they say f of x multiplied by g of x is greater than 0, where is greater than 0 is when both graphs are negative. And then you can see that from this point here going this direction, both graphs are above. So they will always be positive. From negative 2 going to the left, they will always be both positive, right? So the first answer there is going to be x is greater than, your x is less than negative 2, right? So the answer there is going to be x is less than negative 2. So we collect our 1 mark there. We collect our 1 mark there. And then we go to the next question. The next question they're saying, for which values of x is f of x over g of x less or equals to 0? Remember, okay, and then another point, we have another point. Nope, we don't have another point. From this one, we don't have another point where both graphs are more positive, right? Because here, the other is positive, the other is negative, right? And then you can see here, after this one, again, the other is positive, the other is negative, right? So that is the only answer there for the first one, right? So when we go to the second one, when they say, for which values of x is f of x less or equal to 0, it means that less or equal to 0, I get less or equal to 0 when I multiply a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive. So the other graph just needs to be a negative below the x-axis, the other above, right? So let's look at where it is like that, right? So you can see that we agree that from this point going this direction, they are both positive, right? And then starting from here going this direction, you can see this one is positive and this one is negative, right? And it's like that up to this interesting point there, right? We remember we're interested in the x-intercept, right? So before this, before the x-intercept there, you can see that okay, the other was negative, the other was positive, right? And then our answer ends at the x and at the another x-intercept, right? We don't go from x-intercept and pass another x-intercept. To give you another example, right? Okay, so with this one we need less than 0. So we agreed that okay, from 2 going to from -2 going to +2, but the other graph is positive, the other is negative, right? So it's going to be from -2, and then x up to 2, right? And then remember the inequality are going to be like that, right? And remember they said we should include a negative, right? Okay, we should include a negative, or we should include a 0, sorry, we should include a 0. So it means that we're supposed to include the -2 and the 2, right? But before we include them, we look at where g of x is 0. G of x is a denominator. It means that if denominator is 0, we've got undefined. It means that that coordinate we cannot include it. So which coordinate is g of x equals to 0? G of x is a straight line, right? So straight line is equals to 0 only there. So it means that +2 cannot be included. So the answer is going to be like this, right? So we collect a mark here and a mark there. If you include this one, you are not going to get 2 marks, you're going to get 1, all right? And then after that, after this point here, let's look at after. And then after we can still see that okay, the other is still positive, the other change to be positive, the other change to be negative. So we still have positive and negative, right? So it's from 2 going to the right. And then remember 2 we cannot include it because in 2 we've got a denominator of 0, so we cannot include it, right? So it's, the other answer is going to be what's going to be x is greater than 2, right? So this one I'll use an and x is greater than 2, right? And when x is greater than 2, so those are the places where this equation is like is allowed, right? Okay, so now let's go to the next one. The next one we are not going to be interested on the x-intercept, right? Remember the first one we were more interested in the x-intercept, right? Remember the first one we were more interested in x-intercept, so I shouldn't forget the coordinates there. So now we are more interested in what? We are more interested in this one, which was -3 is to 5, if I'm not mistaken. And then this one here, which is 2 is to 0. So now we are only interested on the intersection where the two graphs intersect, right? So we are only interested where the two graphs intersect. So now, this one they're asking for which values of x is f of x greater than g of x. It means that where f of x is above the g of x, right? F of x is above g of x, right? So you can see that starting from here, okay, g of x was below, and then f of x was above, right? But after this intersection here, and then this one becomes below, right? And then this one becomes above, right? Until this point here, where this one went above and this one came below, right? So I'm going to give you a colorful color to show you, right? I'm going to show you about only, I can only choose one graph, right? I'm going to choose um the parabola, right? Or a straight line is fine. Let me just choose a straight line. Where is the, okay, remember we're talking about f of x greater. So let me choose f of x, which is a parabola, right? Where parabola is greater than straight line. So you can see that from here going this direction, from here going this direction, from here going this direction, this graph will be above the straight line. And then from here going this direction, the parabola is above the straight line, right? So it means that my answers are from what? Are from these two here going this direction, and also from these three here going this direction. Alright. So my answers here are going to be x, sorry, are going to be x less than 3, -3. X less than -3. Right? And then the other one is going to be and we can use and, right? And when x is greater than 2. So those are our two answers, right? Those are our two answers. So this thing is not difficult at all, guys. This thing is not difficult at all. I know you're going to watch this video. You can rewind until you understand this, right? But I'm also going to just give you another example, right? I'm just going to give you another example. Remember, this example is just an example, right? It is not a real function. It is just a function, right? It is not a real function. I'm just drawing, right? I'm just drawing. So let's say this is my x, and then this is my y, right? And then let me use a set face graph. Let me use this graph here. So there is our graph, right? And then we can have another straight line there. Let's have another straight line there, right? And then let's say the coordinates here is -3 is to -4 is the point of intersection, and then this B here, let's say is what? Let's say is I can choose 1 is to 0, right? And then here let's choose 2 is to 0, right? 2 is to 0, right? And then here again, okay, this one is C, and then this one is D, and then let's say D is what? Let's say D is 3 over 2. Let's say 3 over 2 is to 1. All right, so let's say those are our coordinates. All right, so we've got C here, and then we've got A here, and then we've got D there, and then we've got B there. All right, and then they ask us, okay, let's say this one is f of x, and then this one is g of x. All right, so when they ask us a questions like this, the other graph, okay, like this, greater than 0 or less than 0, right? Greater than 0 or less than 0. The question that deals with greater than 0 or less than 0 are the questions that deals with the x-intercept, right? So I've skipped one coordinate there. Let me just write this one as -2 is to 2. Okay, so although it doesn't make really sense, so let's just keep it as it is, right? Or let me just write a fraction, it's fine. Let me just write -3 is to 2. So let me just write, or negative half, yes, let me just use negative half. Negative half is to 0. Yes, let's just use it like that. Okay, so although my graph is not realistic, but the most important thing is for you to have these x coordinates there, because the question wants you to find for which values of x. Right, so in this case, if they ask us for which values of x, if they talk about a 0 here, just know that, okay, when they talk about 0, the most important thing is going to be a the x-intercepts. Right, if they talk about 0 greater or less than 0, the most important part is going to be our x-intercept. But before we continue, let me just clear this one. They can talk about 0 like this, for which values of x is f of x minus g of x greater than 0, right? So you might think that, okay, the most important part is going to be the x and the x-intercept. For in this case, the most important part is not the x-intercept, because this one can be simplified and be written as like this, right? Like this. So this one is different because it can be written like this. Okay, but let's go back to this one. I told you that if they ask us for which values of x is f of x greater than 0. So f of x is a parabola. So our parabola is greater than 0 where? Parabola is greater than 0 from this point to that point, right? From this point to that point. From this point to that point, right? So that is where our f of x is greater than 0. It's from negative half to positive 2, right? It's from negative half to positive 2. So the answer here is going to be from negative half, from negative half, it's going to be negative 1 over 2, and then x, and then positive 2. So it's going to be like this, right? So that is going to be our answer, right? Because it's up on this portion, right? And so we say it has got intersection because it is starting somewhere and ending somewhere. So that is where we write our equation, coordinates in a three form, in a three-letter form, right? Three values form. Okay. So now let's go to the next question. The next question, they ask us for f of x multiplied by g of x greater than 0. So f of x and g of x, when we multiply them, they give us greater than 0, where they've got same sign, either both of them positive or both of them negative, right? So this one is positive here. So this one is positive here. So this one is positive here. And then the straight line is positive there, right? And then this parabola is going to be positive where? The parabola is going, you're negative here, and then negative there, and then negative there, right? So those are the places that are very important, right? So when we look at this, when they say greater than 0, both of them has to be negative, or both of them has to be positive. So I already told you that the most important points on this graph to achieve this are going to be the x-intercept. So it's going to be this x-intercept, it's going to be this x-intercept, It's going to be this x-intercept, right? So those are the most important parts. So the most important values are going to be this one. Those are my critical values, right? My critical values are the values of x-intercept, right? For the equations that needs less or equal to or greater than 0, right? So when I answer this one, I need where both of them, I say greater than 0, I need where both graphs are positive or both of them are negative. So we start from the left going this direction, right? So starting from the left going this direction, I'll come and meet here. So everything that happens this side is coming from here going to the left, right? So the most important is that before negative 1 over 2, you can see that both graphs are negative, right? So my answer is going to be x is less than negative 1 over 2. There is no intersection because we are going to negative infinity, right? And then after this part, the other is negative, the other is positive. Okay, we are fine. The other is positive, the other is negative. Up to this point here, after this point, this one is positive and this one is also positive. And then positive and positive, and up to this point here, right? All here up to this point here, the both graphs are positive. And then positive and positive gives me greater than 0. And now we've got intersection because we are starting from here and ending there, right? We are starting from negative or from 1 ending at 2, right? So I'll write it in form of intersection, which is 1x and then bigger number, right? So there is my answer, right? And then after that, I can see that, okay, after this point here, you can see that this one is positive and this one's going to be negative up to infinity, right? It's going to be negative, sorry. This one's going to be negative up to infinity, right? So it means that the answer there is not going to be part of my answers, right? So the answers will be 1, 2, 3 marks for this kind of question. Just return this. It have got 3 marks, all right? And then again, when they ask us about for which values of x will f of x be greater than g of x, right? F of x be greater than g of x. So what is f of x? F of x is a parabola. So where is the parabola greater than a straight line? A parabola, sorry, a parabola is going to be greater than a straight line. Remember, a straight line is this one, right? Remember, a straight line is this one, right? Remember, a straight line is this one, right? That is our straight line, right? So this straight line is, okay, the one where the parabola is above the straight line. So you can see that, okay, we've got that straight line. Our parabola is only above the straight line from this point here to this point, right? It's from this point to this point. So that is why I told you that, okay, for this kind of question, the x-intercept doesn't matter. We focus more on the intersection of the graphs, right? So the intersection here, we know that it was at negative 3, and then the intersection here, we know that it is a positive 3 over 2, all right? So because it's from here to here where the parabola is above, it means that I'm going to write my equation in an intersection because it's from this point to that point, right? So it's going to be from negative 3 and then x and then 3 over 2. So there it is. So that is how I'm going to answer this question, right? So I think by this video you'll be able to answer this kind of questions. They are not difficult at all, right? Just go and practice them, and we'll also look at them when we are on our winter school, right? Obviously on our online winter school, make sure that we finish with this one, right? I'm just making sure that I post this video so that you can just go and look at it before we even go into class. That's in that way I believe it's gonna be easier, right?